Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know you literally got here from LA last night.
Yes.
So why was it important for you to be here in Toronto with us?
Well, I've been to Toronto, I don't know, a couple times, and I love it. I've always loved it. Everybody is so sweet here. And also, I heard Michelle Obama's here, and so I
heard
said,
that too.
if they're going to invite me to a conference that Michelle Obama's speaking at, then, you know, I'm good.
Right?
Yeah.
And guys, we're also here for Sophia, right? I like that you say that you've heard that Canadians are nice. I like to think that that stereotype is very accurate, that we are polite.
Yeah. And it's just called bacon here. It's not called Canadian bacon.
Yeah, it's just bacon.
I learned that this morning.
Yeah, you just ask for bacon, they give you delicious meat on a plate.
Yeah.
Girlboss is such an incredible entity. There's so many layers to it. Can you rewind for us and kind of tell us a story about how Girlboss was born and why you felt it was needed in society?
Yeah. So I was 22 when I started my first company. It's been a full-on slog of 13 years of entrepreneurship for me. It's the only thing I know. And I'm kind of an accidental entrepreneur. You know, I started an eBay store and I had no network and I didn't finish college. And it was, you know, an experience that I think is unique because I just kind of came out of the woodwork and bootstrapped a company to $30 million and investors came in and were like, what? Who does this?
Yeah.
You know? And from there, you know, the company exploded, hired a lot of people, hired executives, but didn't have people on the outside advising me. People who weren't employed by me or someone who didn't have a stake in the business. And I realized how important community was and how, I guess, I didn't see myself in the business book section. I went to the business book section and I saw, you know, Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In came out a year before Girlboss. And there were very few millennial women, no one I really related to. And, you know, my story, I think, resonated with women, so many women out there who are using Shopify, which is Canadian.
Yes.
Okay. But all of these amazing digital tools that we have. You know, I had eBay and, MySpace, and now we have, you know, so many ways to start businesses online, and we don't have to be the traditional kind of like MBA entrepreneur to do that. So I wrote Girlboss 5 years ago in 2014, and it told my story. It told the story of building my first company, Nasty Gal, the explosion, all the things I learned, and you know, it spent 18 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and sold 500,000 copies. I never ever anticipated that. And
I just want to press pause for a second. Can we please give her a round of applause for that? That's amazing. I've read the book. I'm sure I'm not alone. It's so powerful, and it's also really raw and honest, which you don't often find in books like that.
I mean, I was really naive when I wrote it, and so it's easy to be inspiring when you're like, yeah, everything's like, I'm winning. Check out like all of these, you know, it's like now I'm like, wow, maybe I really need to reread my book and take my own advice. My mom has told me that to do that a bunch of times. But I wrote the book, I took it to a dozen cities, and I watched these girls line up to get their book signed. And while they were in line to get their book signed, they were exchanging business cards. And these aren't necessarily executives whose companies have given them business cards. They're like self-identifying, ambitious women who had no other place than a Barnes & Noble, which here is called Chapters.
You know, she knows her Canadian stuff.
Doing my research since last night. And, you know, watching them network. And it seemed like there was no other place for them to, for the non-executive woman to find one another, to support one another, to network. And so that was the way Girlboss was born. I wasn't able to start the company, you know, until 3 years later until, you know, early 2017. But the community grew itself. The hashtag's been used 17 million times on Instagram.
Wow.
And when I started the company, it was just a matter of like catching and galvanizing the community that, you know, had built itself in many ways before, you know, I've even showed up to catch it.
Which I think it was an area that was needed. It needed that attention. I mean, if the hashtag's any indication, people want to use it. They want to be proud of being girl bosses. They want to be girl bosses themselves. Yeah. And so you saw that opportunity. You were signing books. You saw these women needing to network, wanting to network. And I know you say, you know, late 2017 or early 2017, but it's 2019, and you have built Girlboss into this amazing entity that is so multifaceted. I mean, from the podcast to the rallies to the new venture that you're going on with Girlboss. There's all these different arms, and it feels like every arm points to one thing, and that's building a community and building a network.
Yeah. So it wasn't until 2015 that I started the podcast, which still feels really early for podcasts. And that was, I had a couple hours a week to interview. While I was still doing Nasty Gal, Girlboss wasn't my focus. But I thought, if my story is inspiring, the story of so many other women will be just as inspiring. And I had this incredible kind of alumni of women that I had met over, the decade of my having built a business that I was so, so lucky to know and being able to harness?
Harness.
I was going to say harvest, which is the
You
same
can
thing.
harvest those relationships.
It really is the same thing. On behalf of a girl who may not be able to attend a $10,000 women's conference for, C-level executives is a really powerful thing. And then we built the Girlboss Rally. So it wasn't until early 2017 that I said, okay, how can I replicate the experience that I saw in those bookstores 3 years prior?
Yeah.
How can I bring these women together with the same kind of access that I've given them on the the podcast, and really give them a place not just to find one another, but to get tools and resources. At the Girlboss Rally, inspiration is table stakes. Leaving inspired is great, but if you don't have the tools you need or the relationships you need, and you're not leaving armed with something that you can take home, inspiration can expire very quickly. Knowledge doesn't. And so that's really, really important to us. So the last Girlboss Rally, we just held our 5th at UCLA. We had 1,600 women.
Wow.
And 120 speakers, and women from 30 countries fly in for it. So Girlboss is very international.
I'm going to put the audience on the spot. Were there any Canadians? And if you were there, I want to hear you scream. Yes!
Cool.
We had some Canadian presence
Okay.
at that. I love that.
One of them's your friend that you told me about.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Daphne, you're in here.
Thanks for coming.
She's the biggest fan of the
Cool.
Girlboss Rally.
So it's a really powerful experience. We have a lot of women-owned businesses. We have a shopping bazaar. We had a job fair at the last one. We want to help women advance, whether they're attending the rally or participating in the rally. And then we built this digital community, which is what we launched, 8 or 10 weeks ago. So it's a social network. It's not an app yet. It's at girlboss.com. And so girlboss.com used to be more of a content site, and now it's a place where women can create their own content and connect with one another and have a beautiful profile that showcases not just what they do, but who they are, because a lot of us don't fit into the traditional archetype of what a resume kind of reduces us to.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful.
Black and white piece of paper with some text.
I'm unemployable, and my resume says, I don't even know what. I've had 2 jobs, and so many of us have side hustles or are good at other things, and who we are and what we do in our personal life is becoming something that employers are embracing. And if we are an entrepreneur or a small business owner, I guess we can be on a creative network like Behance, or we can be on LinkedIn, and none of those really serve us completely. So it's a place where a very multifaceted woman who has ambitions beyond possibly her traditional career or has a traditional career can show up and represent herself and connect with other entrepreneurs in ways that replicates the experience at the rally, but can happen 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
And anywhere in the world.
Anywhere, well, eventually.
Eventually.
There's a few Canadians that snuck onto the platform. If you have a US phone number, you can get onto it right now, but we will be launching internationally.
Amazing. And I feel like, again, it all ties back to community for the masses, which is, why we're here today. Why is it so important, not only in business, but also in life, to have a supportive community around you?
It's everything. They say something like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's very, very true. I would never have accomplished what I've accomplished without an incredible team behind me, incredible today advisors, women who caught me when the shit hit the fan. Right? People who stuck around, who supported me when I thought, it was over and I was damaged goods and would never recover from, what was a really difficult time at Nasty Gal. So my experience has been that it's everything. And literally this morning, getting hair and makeup was sitting in my chair, just asking advice over text message all morning to 8:30 in the morning, which I'm sure is really annoying, but having the kind of humility you need to say, hey, there's a lot of things I don't know.
Yeah.
Being able to augment your experience with the experience of other people who have done it before, who are experts, to be able to have the privilege of building that, right? It takes time. If we can accelerate that with the Girlboss platform, that's something that I think is really unique and really powerful, because otherwise, it's taken me 14 years to build the kind of network that I have.
And with Girlboss, now you're sharing that with everybody. When someone goes to a rally, how do you want them to feel when they walk away? Because it feels like a truly unique experience where it's not just one thing, it's many things.
I want them to feel like anything is possible. I want them to feel less alone. I want them to have heard the stories of women who have experienced hardship, because we all have, and we don't talk about it enough. I want people to feel armed with the resources that they need to go change their life, and I want them to leave with amazing relationships. I want them to find a co-founder. I want them to find a collaborator. I want them to find a friend. And especially for the woman who may be in a more remote area, to come to the rally and meet women who are also entrepreneurs, when in her town she may very well be one of the only women she knows who's an entrepreneur. We're very spoiled on the coasts in the US and in larger cities, but for the rest of us who are in smaller markets, there's even less.
Which is why I think digital platforms that connect people will be so powerful. Now, you mentioned Nasty Gal, of course, amazing international fashion cult that you built. Kind of didn't go the way anyone had planned, but here you are with Girlboss. What did you learn from your time at Nasty Gal that's really top of mind when you go into Girlboss every day?
I think about leadership differently. I think about building culture intentionally. It's something that for even a very small business, we have 26 people, I think about a lot. And with Nasty Gal, culture grew on accident. I had never worked in an office before. The only office I've ever worked in, my name has been on the lease of, it's taken me a long time to understand, what leadership looks like, and just day-to-day management even looks like. So making it clear what it is what are our priorities, how we work together, how process works, the level of excellence that I want to drive across the organization that everybody holds themselves to, giving people objective tools they need so they can go run with them, rather than Sophia would have said this, or it shouldn't be subjective. This is what Girlboss is doing, this is how we do it, and then you can deputize people and they can go run. It's challenging as an entrepreneur not to think that all of my ideas are the best ideas. And battling that every day is a challenge, and I'm often wrong. My gut used to somehow be like gold, and I don't really trust it anymore. I think anxiety will do that. I'm always trying to differentiate between my anxiety and my intuition, and I think it's mostly anxiety, so I try not to act on those feelings because it may not work this time. And to hold executives accountable. So, at Nasty Gal, I had never managed C-level executives, and I hired people who were experts, who had careers for longer than I had been alive at that point, who had worked in large companies and built companies and been in startups and managed a lot of people who were domain experts, and said, hey, go diagnose what my company needs and run and build it, and just somehow all work together seamlessly, rather than necessarily laying out, this is what the next month looks like, the next few months look like. It exploded. And so strategy was something we kind of grandfathered in after we were a pretty big company, and holding executives accountable to executing on that was something I could have done a much better job of. So I guess in a nutshell, I learned a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like the biggest takeaway I get from that is having a solid team. Having people that can be thinkers and doers on their own, but also understand the brand ethos of Girlboss. And then they can support you in your vision and also call you out when maybe it's not the right move, which is a very honest thing to do and a very difficult place to be sometimes.
I hope that people do that. There's very rare instances where I pull rank and say, I really believe that we should go in this other direction. One of those things was that we were going to launch the community as a fully paid closed community, because we wanted it to be super duper high quality, which it is. And I had a conversation with my investors, and they said, hey, no one's ever done that. like, don't make this harder on yourself than it is. Freemium exists for a reason, and at some point I think we'll have a premium subscription at some point with a lot more resources and access. And this was not long before we launched, and it seemed really crazy to even consider changing, you know, the strategy for launching the product. But, you know, to give the product to anybody who, regardless of their income level, could access it is, you know, felt like the right thing to do. And so pivoting, I mean, a month before we launched, like, pulling out
your poor anxiety.
pulling out a paywall, you know, our poor engineers. But, you know, it was actually someone from Canada who wrote me once, and this is the kind of person that I want Girlboss to serve. She wrote me and said, hey, you know, I lost my job and I couldn't afford your book, so I checked it out from the library. And I read it, and I got a job, and then I bought your book. Like, that's the girl I want to make sure that we're also including, because she's the girl who needs our platform the most.
Oh, you're giving me goosebumps.
It's pretty,
giving me goosebumps. I love that. So you've been through a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and I think you're on a serious up right now. But for those who may be going through a difficult time business-wise and kind of need a little piece of advice to keep them going when life gets tough, you know, what kept you driven? What kept you going?
Well, I couldn't quit, and I couldn't be fired. So there's that. Once you have investors, you're just like stuck. I think I'm a little bit of a masochist. I think I have a chip on my shoulder. I feel like I snuck in the back door and totally don't belong in business at all, and still feel, you know, I think we all have imposter syndrome to a certain extent, but I've learned that everything's hard. Like, life is hard, business is hard, and people don't talk about it enough, and we're all living in our own kind of like self-created nightmare that, like, we, you know, lash ourselves over things every day that, like, nobody else is paying attention to. And, you know, I constantly think that the last thing I said was, like, totally weird, and people are just, like, going on their day. They, like, aren't paying as much attention as you think they are. But I'd say there's nowhere to go but to keep going, right? There's no choice. So for me, you know, I got up quickly. I've been recovering from my failures as I've been building, which I think is challenging. You know, taking time off might have been nice, but Girlboss was such a just, you know, clear opportunity, important thing to build, was just, you know, waiting for me to catch it after, you know, 4 months after I left Nasty Gal, which was a lot. And people say that's resilient, but nobody knows how hard that is, and, like, possibly how little resilience I actually feel. So getting up doesn't necessarily mean that you are resilient, but I'd say you just have to keep getting up and getting up and getting up.
Just keep swimming.
There's nothing else there's really nothing else to do.
Yeah.
It's the only way you can learn. You can take all of your past learnings into what you do next. Hopefully try not to make those mistakes again, but you probably will make some of them.
And also, it's okay if you do, right? Just be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself. Try to be a good person in life. I feel like we just gotta bring it back to that sometimes.
Just, like, be decent, try to be nice to yourself, take care of yourself.
And come to things like this.
Yeah.
Right? These are good for you.
Invest in your, like, education and bettering yourself.
Today we're celebrating moonshots. We're celebrating the doers and the thinkers, you know, the people that go out there and go for what they want, dream big, and definitely don't shy away from working hard. What kind of impact do you think community has in that kind of thought process and going big?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to think of someone achieving a moonshot alone. Like, I can't even imagine what that would look like.
Yeah.
So I think community is just like a given if you are gonna go after something really big, and being able to have people find, you know, the holes in your thinking. And, you know, for me, I mean, my moonshot is just, like, having a personal life and, like, having stability, which is the first time in my life at 35 that I actually crave it. And yeah, so I
love that your moonshot is stability and happiness.
It seems after, like, you know, the life that I've had, it's like outlandish and challenging.
How dare you strive for happiness and stability, Sophia?
It's not. For some reason, it's not easy.
I know. I think it's difficult for many people, but I think to be able to say that out loud and be like, I'm going to strive for stability and happiness, I think that takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage.
I just want to be normal, boring. Just want to be boring.
I don't know how to tell you this. You are not normal,
Make dinner.
Sophia.
Thanks.
Which is the most beautiful compliment I could give anyone, just so
that.
we're clear.
Trying to be less of a novelty.
Well, I tip my hat off to you,
Thank you.
for your moonshot and for being here and for kicking off main stage with everybody in this room.
It's a
for being
pleasure.
educated on Canadian bacon, which here we just call bacon.
I ate some.
You ate some, she likes it. So thank you so much. Thank you all so much for listening. Let's give a big round of applause to Ms. Yeah.